In this lesson, we will cover user creation and management. The first thing to establish on your site is how user accounts are created. This is done under configuration rather than under people. So we're going to go to Manage, Configuration. And the very first option in the configuration area is People Account Settings. Here we will determine the default user behavior, including what happens when somebody tries to create a user account, or if they can even try to create a user account at all. The first option is whether or not there's a personal contact form on the user page. This would be appropriate for a community site, but may not be appropriate for a site where you don't want people to be directly contacting those individuals on the site. For example, a company profile. You can also set the role names for two of the default user types that are on your site. Anonymous, which means the non-authenticated user. So you could change this to public or guest or patron, any number of options. And you can change which user role is the administrator user role. So if you have multiple types of users on your site, you might choose a different role for the administrator role. The administrator role will always be given all new permissions whenever there's a new module or a feature that has a set of modules with various permissions. Essentially, the administrator user role is somebody who can do anything on the site. This role has security implications and needs to be treated with care. The next option that you'll have here is who can create accounts. So for example, can your site visitors create an account or request account creation by themselves? Or do they need to actually contact someone or have the account created by some type of administrator? You can also determine whether or not visitors can request accounts that then require administrative approval before those accounts are actually enabled and the user can log in. Require email verification when a visitor creates an account will then cause the site to send out an email when the user tries to set up an account to the email address the user attempted to use. The user will then have to go and check their email and then click on the link that they receive in that email to confirm that that is truly their email account. So this provides a level of security, and it also provides some annoyance for the user. So it's something that you'll want to consider whether or not it's worthwhile to use in your particular case. I recommend keeping Enable Password Strength Indicator checked here. What this will do is tell the user how strong or weak the password that they're planning to use actually is. The password strength indicator just forces them to think a little bit more carefully about what they're going to put in as their password. There are contributed modules that you can use that will force very strong passwords and give a password policy to your site. You can also choose what happens when a user account is canceled. I don't tend to cancel user accounts, rather, I will block them instead of canceling them. But your site may need to be able to have user accounts canceled, so this is something that you'll want to think about. If somebody creates a bunch of recipes, what will happen to those recipes if either the user cancels the account or somebody else needs to go in and cancel the account because of misbehavior? This next section here controls the emails that are sent when various actions take place with user account creation. Most of these have to do with whether or not visitors are able to try to create accounts on their own and what kinds of approval are required in order for that account to become an actual user account. So this is where you can set up the emails that will be sent and what those emails look like. Two very important automated emails that are in here, regardless of how your user accounts are created, are account activation, which is the email that gets sent when a user account is created, even if that user account is created by a site administrator. And most important of all, password recovery. So what happens when a user forgets their password and needs to click on the forgot password link in order to get a new one? And once you make all these changes, you'll go ahead and save configuration. Once the account settings behavior is established, it's time to create a couple of users on your site. As we've discussed a few times, the first user that you should create, if you haven't already, is an administrative user account for yourself so that you're not continuing to configure the site as user one. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to go to the People tab here. And by clicking on that, I'm now seeing a list of all the users on the site. There's currently only one user, the first user that was created during site installation, which is user 1. Now I'm going to add a user for myself. My password is changeme. This is the password that I really like to give new users when I create them on sites because it gives a hint to the user that they need to go in and change their password. So I'm going to make this user account an administrator. I don't need to notify the user of the new account because I am the user. And then I'll go ahead and create this account. If I click on the account that was just created, I can go ahead and edit it and I can see everything I need to see about this account. I'm going to go back to the People tab here and take a look at the list here. So user Rain has never logged into the site. At this point, I'm going to log out of the site as user 1 and log back in as myself. My interface looks pretty much exactly the same because my user account is an administrative user account, but I don't have root level permissions and I'm not the all-powerful user on the site, so I don't have quite the same level of security risk using this account as I did using the user 1 account. Next, you would create user accounts for anyone going to help with content on the site. For now, I'm simply going to create one authenticated user so that we can test the permissions and see how the site looks with different types of users. So we'll go back to Manage, People, and I'm going to add a user here. Same password, changeme. And I'm not going to choose any user role aside from authenticated, which is already checked, because any user on your site will have the role of authenticated user. In this case, I might notify the user of the new account since this isn't actually me. But right now, I'm not going to do that because I used a fake email address. Scroll down and create this new account. Now, if I go back to the listing of all people on the site, I see these 3 users that I have. I can also see what roles are assigned to each user. Just to be careful, I'm going to go ahead and block the user 1 account. Doing this means the user 1 account will no longer be able to log in. Nothing else has changed. The account still exists on the site, and all of the content that that user created is also still present on the site. It's also still marked as being associated with that particular account. So the only difference is they can't log in until they're no longer blocked. Let's head over to Safari. And now I'm going to log in as that authenticated user account that I created. Since the authenticated user doesn't have that much in the way of permissions, the interface didn't change much at all. The only changes that took place were the login box went away, and now in the top right corner there's a My Account and Logout link. So I can go to the My Account link here, and then I can edit it and change my information if I want to. Since I don't have that many permissions, I cannot change my user role. So all I will be is an authenticated user until an administrator makes me something else. I'm going to log out because what I want to show here is that if this login block were not on the left-hand side, and there's no login link to be found, with a Drupal site, you can usually, unless the site builder has changed this, access the user login page by going to the site URL/user. And now you can log in here as well if you want to. In this lesson, we covered account settings under configuration, where the default behaviors on user accounts can be predefined. This includes automated email messages that might be sent when a user tries to create an account. We also created 2 new users, an administrative user and a basic authenticated user.